welcome to the Alpha. I'm Aryan, the host with the most.
The most fragile masculinity.
Rude, but okay, let's roll with that. So today, we're diving into something serious. Gendered oppression. Now, it's a big deal. And as the alpha male of this discussion,
You're definitely not the alpha of anything, but thanks for trying. Let's get started.
Y'all ready to talk about smashing the patriarchy? Because I came prepared.
So let's dive into gender depression. It's not just about individual bias, it's systemic. Gender depression refers to the ingrained inequalities and discrimination that people face based on their gender. At its core is patriarchy, a social structure where men disproportionately hold power in leadership, moral authority, and access to resources.
oh, like when everyone just assumes that guys are natural born leaders, right? Totally unfair to us.
Right. Because men are really out here struggling to land CEO positions. Your hardships are noted, King.
Hey, I'm just saying, like, stereotypes hurt everyone, even guys like me.
Okay, but Aryan actually has a point, kind of. Stereotypes do harm everyone. For example, hegemonic masculinity enforces this idea that men must be dominant, emotionless, and hyper-competitive. It pressures men to suppress their emotions and pushes them into rigid roles, which can harm their mental health.
Because while men are told they need to be in charge, women are expected to be caretakers or followers, which restricts their opportunities. This gender stratification, where power, resources, and privileges are distributed unequally between genders.
Right. For example, in the workplace, women still face the glass ceiling, an invisible barrier that prevents them from advancing to top positions. Did you know that only about 10% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women? And that number is even lower for women of color.
Okay, so women are underrepresented in leadership, but doesn't that just mean that we're bad at recognizing their skills?
Exactly. That's part of the problem. Unconscious bias. Studies show people are less likely to perceive women as capable leaders because they don't fit the traditional image of authority, which is rooted in masculinity.
But it gets worse when you add intersectionality. That's the way different forms of oppression overlap. For example, a black woman faces both racism and sexism, so her experience of gendered oppression are not the same as that of a white woman.
And that's what makes gender depression so deeply ingrained. It's not just about individual attitudes, it's woven into this fabric of society.
So what I'm hearing is that society needs therapy like ASAP.
Society needs a lot more than therapy, Aryan, but recognizing the problem is a really good first step.
Let's dive into how gender depression shows up in everyday life. One big example is occupational segregation. Women are disproportionately concentrated in lower-paying, care-based professions, teaching, nursing, childcare, while men dominate higher-paying fields like tech, finance, and engineering. This isn't a coincidence, it's systemic.
Okay, but what about guys being expected to pay for dates? Like, that's oppression too, right?
Aryan, sweetie, you're oppressed because of your wallet. Someone called Gloria Steinman, patriarchy has a new victim.
Jokes aside, Aryan actually has a point. That expectation men are always paying ties into toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity tells men they need to be providers, stoic, and financially dominant, which reinforces traditional gender roles.
And those roles do not just hurt men, they harm everyone. For women, it means being seen as dependent or incapable of financial independence. And for men, it's pressure to prove their worth by how much they earn or spend.
And this connects to the wage gap. Women earn about 82 cents for every dollar a man makes in the US, even when doing the same job. For women of color, the gap is even wider. Black women earn 63 cents, while Latino women earn 57 cents. These gaps are why financial dynamics and relationships often skew toward men.
So basically, the whole men pay thing is a scam. Like, society just found a way to keep us broke and in charge.
Let's talk about the research. A 2020 study by Smith et al. Highlights that women in STEM face significant barriers, including fewer leadership opportunities, higher rates of workplace harassment, and the notorious glass ceiling. This invisible barrier prevents women from advancing to top positions, regardless of their qualifications or performance.
And don't forget the glass escalator effect. Research by Williams in Gender and Society shows that men and female-dominated professions, like nursing or elementary education, are often promoted faster than their female colleagues.
Wait, so even when guys are in so-called women's jobs, they still get a boost? That doesn't even make sense.
It's frustrating, but true. The glass escalator is a prime example of institutional sexism, discrimination embedded into the structures and policies of society. It perpetuates the idea that men are naturally suited for leadership, even in spaces where women dominate the workforce.
And here's the kicker. Men in these fields are often encouraged into administrative roles instead of caregiving ones. So while a female nurse might stay at the bedside, her male colleague is pushed into management.
But what about women of color? Does the glass escalator effect work for them too?
Not quite. That's where Kimberlé Crenshaw's work on intersectionality comes into play. It shows that women of color face compounded forms of oppression. It's not just sexism, it's also racism layered on top. And for LGBTQ plus folks or people with disabilities, you can add homophobia or ableism to the mix.
There's this idea called the double bind dilemma, where women of color, especially black women, are penalized for either being too assertive or not assertive enough. If they speak up, they're labeled angry or difficult. If they stay quiet, they're seen as weak or incapable.
And it's not just a workplace issue. Look at healthcare. Studies show black women are less likely to have their pain taken seriously. Serena Williams, one of the most famous athletes in the world, nearly died during childbirth because doctors dismissed her symptoms.
Wait, Serena Williams, the tennis legend?
Exactly. If someone as high profile as Serena isn't believed, imagine what happens to people without her resources.
And that's reproductive health care. Policies restricting access to abortion or birth control disproportionately impact low-income women and women of color. These policies reinforce gender depression by denying women agency over their own bodies.
So it's everywhere, workplaces, healthcare, even basic rights. How are we supposed to fix something this huge?
It starts with acknowledging the problem. Studies like Smith et al.'s and Crenshaw's work give us a framework to understand how these systems operate. From there, it's about advocating for change, whether it's supporting workplace diversity initiatives, pushing for healthcare reform, or just calling out everyday sexism when we see it.
And maybe convincing Aryan to stop calling it women work. Baby steps.
Hey, I'm learning here.
Reform begins with systemic change. For instance, enforcing robust equal pay laws, like the Paycheck Fairness Act, can help close the wage gap. Increasing funding for parental leave and subsidizing childcare would also go a long way in leveling the playing field for working parents.
So if companies really cared about gender equality, they'd have to stop punishing moms for taking time off and actually supporting dads taking leave too.
Programs like Girls Who Code and Black Girls Rock in STEM address gender and racial disparities by providing mentorship and opportunities for young women to enter male-dominated fields.
Representation matters too. Research shows that media portrayals shape our understanding of what's possible. Seeing strong, diverse women and non-binary people in leadership, whether it's in movies, boardrooms, or Congress, can inspire real-world change.
So basically, the alpha move is to smash the patriarchy and back equality?
Exactly. Take Iceland as an example. It's consistently ranked as the most gender-equal country in the world. They mandate boardroom quotas to ensure women have a say in decision-making.
And Sweden's family leave policies are another game changer. Both parents are encouraged to share childcare responsibilities. That's not just good for gender equality, it's better for the families too.
Makes sense. It's like fixing a broken team dynamic. Everyone needs to pull their weight.
But reforms don't just happen in boardrooms or parliaments. They start with us. Checking our biases, supporting inclusive workplace policies, and even small things like challenging sexist jokes or assumptions make a difference.
And vote! Leaders who prioritize gender equality can push for policies like paid leave, accessible childcare, and protection for LGBTQ plus individuals.
Hear that, viewers? The patriarchy doesn't stand a chance against informed viewers like you.
And allies like Aryan,
That's
smashing toxic masculinity one realization at a time.
Keep up the good work, Alpha. Or should I say, Sigma. Thanks for watching.
And remember, real alphas lift each other up.